$3,450 is what I was quoted in order to make the necessary repairs to this car for it to pass an Alberta out of province inspection. Today, we're gonna run through everything that they said was wrong with this car, what we all need to fix, and what we're currently doing on this thing, because as you can see, it has assumed the N54 car position. Hood up on jack stands. I was quite confident when I bought this car and kind of looked over it that there was nothing wrong with it that would make it fail an out of province inspection. I was that confident that it just drove fine. As far as work that I've personally done to the car right now, all I've really done is swap the wheels on it a couple times and put a tune on, which takes virtually no wrenching of the car. Somehow, I did not know that my front strut mounts were in two separate pieces, probably since I took delivery of the car. Now, while this car may not be registered, I have allegedly put about 5,000 kilometers on it. And in those 5,000 kilometers, I failed to ever notice that, hey, my upper strut mounts are in two separate pieces. I'll grab one of the strut mounts and show you guys, because they are quite screwed. Now, I've actually had to try and push the pieces back together on this thing so you can actually see what this strut mount would have looked like. If you look, you can see here, the rubber literally just separated, like it ripped right out. So this is the piece that bolts onto the top of your strut, keeps the top hat and the spring in place. And then this is what that's supposed to sit and pivot on. And it's just destroyed. As funny as it is that a part falls apart like this is a bit scary to think that my strut literally could have fallen right out of my car with a big enough bump. This is a great reason and lesson as to why we have provincial inspections and insurance inspections for cars before they're safe to go out on the road, because I didn't know. I seriously didn't know any better. The car seemed fine to me. It seemed to drive fine, ride fine, bit of a little squeak, didn't think anything of it. And then you put it on a lift and the suspension is literally falling out of the car. So on to the big question then. What was a shop gonna charge me for these two parts? How much can I buy the parts for myself? And then also, how much labor was the shop gonna charge me to install these two upper strut mounts? The shop quoted me $66.13 for each strut mount, making it around $133 for the pair. I was able to buy them from my parts store and they got them to me same day for $50 a side. Then there's labor costs. The shop wanted to charge $750 in labor to take the two struts out, swap over the top strut mounts, and then put it all back together. Does $750 in labor for two strut mounts sound like a lot to me? Yes. Is my car still in pieces after 3 days of me trying to replace them? Also yes. Now, I definitely had a bit of false confidence coming into this job. A strut mount seems fairly straightforward on most cars, and I say it would be. A BMW, it is not. Have you seen how the control arms are? Why? We're just talking about the part of like taking the strut out. Let's talk about actually getting the spring off. We're gonna call this attempt number one, which were these cheap little spring compressors I've had since I was 16 putting lowering springs on my Mustang, and these were like $40. Realized very quickly that I do not trust these, and these were sketching me out because they really couldn't get a good hook on the springs. So we had to upgrade. I was like, you know what? We've already saved 750 theoretical dollars in labor. We can spend some money on a specialty tool to make sure we don't die. We're gonna call this version 2. So this is a pretty big deal spring compressor I bought on Amazon. This was like $120, I wanna say. And this actually did do the job. Albeit it's still a bit sketchy. The first time I used it, the spring like slipped around the top hat, which made me freak out. And then I just tried to unbolt the top hat, and it did unbolt, and then I stepped out of the way and it exploded. So bad idea, don't do it that way. It really looked like we kind of had the spring compressed, but I didn't realize just how much tension are on the springs in one of these cars until I got them out. So I was wearing a motorcycle helmet, probably still wouldn't have saved me. But if you're thinking about attempting a job like this, invest in one of these, and also invest in a mechanic friend that can come over and do the job for you. So with the help of my mechanic friend Stiffy and my lovely Amazon tool, we do have the struts back in the car and the springs are back on and the top hats are put back together. And now having him here and just having a fresh set of eyes, we got them done fairly quickly. We got the struts out, we got it compressed, switched over, blah, blah, blah. Once you do the first one, the second one goes way faster, you know the gist. So now I just have to bolt everything back up, which honestly isn't too bad, but as mentioned, because the control arms go like this, it's a bit of a pain in the ass to line everything up and figure out which order you should bolt up each arm and each strut just to make sure everything kind of lines up in place, because you kind of just have to lift everything back together, but we're working on it. Don't forget that like that is one of 4 things wrong with the car. So let's go on to the next thing they told me that needs to be fixed before I'll pass an OPI. The next thing they said was wrong with the car is the front right control arm has a bad bushing. So they quoted me out 4 new control arms and the labor to replace all of those. It was $717 for the control arms and $600 for the labor. I'm not 100% sure if the control arms are bad on this thing. Looking at them from doing this work, they don't seem bad to me. We're gonna put it all back together and put it on the lift so I can kind of inspect everything when it's up and done, but apparently those are bad. Now, if one of the arms is bad, I personally am more inclined to just replace one of them and move on. I don't really feel like replacing all of them, but this also is a way too good of an opportunity to put M3 control arms on this thing. So maybe we do that and we really step into building a sleeper race car wagon. Have not ordered the parts for that. I have looked at buying new arms and I can buy them for around the same price they're quoting for actual M3 arms versus just the OEM ones they're looking at putting on. It's a given they're not gonna try and quote me out a performance part, but if I am gonna be replacing the arms, I'm gonna upgrade them. Might as well do it while I'm there. The next thing they said was wrong with the car is my front brake hoses are dry rotted and cracked. So I wanted to take a look at this for myself. They are right, they are dry rotted. I wouldn't say it's very bad, but to be fair, we're talking about brake hoses here, which I think are pretty dang important. This all really sounds like a sign to me that I need to get stainless braided brake lines for this thing. So we're probably gonna order those. Once again, reiterating the fact, it's nice to have a professional come and look at your car before you drive it, because I probably would have never looked at my brake hoses. The brake lines were $173 for a stock replacement, I'm gonna assume, and $300 in labor to install them and bleed the brakes. Wait, I was wrong. The brake flush is a separate charge. $150 to flush my brakes and $20 in brake fluid. So that's like more than $500 to do brake lines and a brake flush. We're gonna put stainless lines on this thing for like $70 US and then do all the labor ourselves. Because not only is that gonna be an upgrade, but that's an easy enough job that I can get done myself. Now the last 2 items on here, one of them I'm definitely gonna do myself, one of them I'm definitely not. Now that we're driving on the right side of the road, and the headlights are still pointing left, they're pointing into oncoming traffic. So those need to be reprogrammed, they need to point the other direction. They charged $134 to do that service. Really hoping maybe we can just do that with Beamer code or like literally just adjust them with a screwdriver. We'll see, but I'm gonna try and figure that out myself because I'm sure there's a tutorial somewhere. And lastly, of course, some of you can probably already think of this, because we're replacing the strut mounts and supposedly replacing some control arms, this thing's gonna need an alignment. $150, I think is what they quoted. Pretty standard stuff for an alignment. I'll probably go back to them for the alignment just because they're a German shop and they'll take care of my car. But that is one last thing that we will need to do. So there you have it. My car's broken. A shop wants a bunch of money to fix it. I'm gonna try and do some of it myself and film the whole process for you guys so you can kind of see what it takes to import and get a car registered, because unfortunately, there's some extra steps. Now, I'm sure there's gonna be people that are gonna tell me, bro, just find a sketchy shop that'll pass it. Just give them like $200 and bribe them and your car will be fine. And I probably could do that, and I could probably take it to a shop that's a bit more lenient on some of the small stuff, like my tire tread. But I wanna make sure this car is safe. And I'm very appreciative of these guys pointing out the issues like, hey, your strut mounts are toast. Hey, your brake lines are bad, because those are genuine things I wanna know. I'd be much more upset if I took it to a mechanic, he told me the car's fine, and then that suspension falls out of the car on the highway and I get hurt. So be sure to subscribe if you wanna see the process of us putting this thing back together and getting it road legal, and then we can finally start on the mods, starting with getting rid of this fishbowl. See you guys in the next one.